Ignorance is, in my opinion, massively underrated, especially in learning a new skill. I think that ignorance plays a really important role in keeping us moving forward, keeping us excited about something, leaving something open for discovery. And even with phrases like ignorance is bliss or this feeling of, I wish I could experience that for the first time again, even with us being aware of those sorts of things, I still think that being ignorant, being unaware, being foolish, being a noob gets a bad rap. I think we look at somebody who is struggling, who has no idea what they're doing, and who is just throwing garbage at the wall and occasionally finding something that makes sense. I think we look at them and we go, oh, they're stumbling. They have no idea what they're doing. They're such a fool. They're not going to learn that way. What are they doing? I need to go help them. I need to go show them how to do this properly. That poor person is just swimming in ignorance. Well, I think that being uninformed, being completely ignorant to the process, to the plan, to what the trends in any particular skill set or industry or profession or whatever are, has benefits to it. I think that not knowing all of that stuff is powerful, is a useful tool, opens up categories of creativity. And there's a counter to this that I want to make sure I'm clear about. People will say learning the theory is not going to make you bad at the thing. If anything, it's going to improve your appreciation of that thing, right? Like learning music theory is going to improve your appreciation of music. It's going to help you explore. It's going to help you in all these other ways. I agree with that. I'm not arguing that we shouldn't learn theory. I'm not arguing that we should stay uninformed. I am arguing that we should appreciate it for what it is so that we can embrace that part of the process. And this is not just about learning to make games. It's also about experiencing games. When you are playing a game for the first time, maybe you don't want to skip ahead. Maybe you don't want to be pulled into the late game content before you're ready for it. I think we've all had that experience. Let's get a little deeper talking about this. First, from the perspective of playing a video game and experiencing it for the first time, and what happens when you try to rush through that phase of ignorance and not get everything out of it that you deserve to get out of it. And then we'll talk about what it's like from the development side of things, not just being new to development, but also how we can look at the game's presentation, how we can look at the game's progression, how a game that we're making might pull in a player who already knows a lot about this genre or who knows nothing about this genre, and how we can take into account players' ignorance when we're designing our projects. This is Game, Develop, Repeat, and I am your host, Chris. Let's get started. Let's start with the experiences of the most uninformed, ignorant, or naive gamers. People who do not know the tropes of video games. Somebody who is brand new to the entire medium, who's just playing for the first time. Most likely these days, that's going to be a kid. Maybe you'll have some adults that haven't played games. Maybe you'll have somebody who is just getting into it as a teenager. But the hobby is pretty widespread now. Most people are aware of games, play games, have seen someone play a game. It's not like some super niche hobby that nobody's heard of. So even if somebody's playing a game for the first time as an adult, they're not ignorant to it. They just haven't experienced it. So they'll have some kind of expectations. But imagine a child who's not heard about games before playing for the first time. Throw yourself back to the first time that you played a game and just think about all of the things that were new to you, all of the things that were interesting and fascinating, and all these colors on the screen, and you're trying to learn to coordinate the buttons on the controller to what happens on the screen, and you've got to reach that moment of understanding of, oh, if I press A, my character jumps, or if I press triangle, this menu opens up. All of these different things, and you're kind of trying to look at the control and look at the screen at the same time, and so on and so on and so on. So that player is not that focused on the gameplay. They're focused entirely on whether or not they're having a good time. And they can have a good time because they like what visuals appear on the screen. They can have a good time because they like that they have a little bit of a challenge, or just that they like that they click a button and something on the screen moves. That's a cool moment. You're in the early phases, and you're going to have these experiences where if you're playing a game for the first time and you're already liking the fact that you can control the character and make it do cool things, and then something really cool happens and you start getting invested in the game, that is going to be a phenomenal and novel experience for you. It's going to be this brand new thing that you've never even imagined that you would experience, right? And we lose sight of that as we continue gaming. So as you continue down this journey, you say, hey, I love this game. This was enjoyable. What else can I play that's like this? Oh, well, maybe you should try this out. No, give me something else that's like this. You play more games like that. You've had fun with that genre. You start hearing about this other genre. You go, okay, I'm going to explore that genre too. You start getting to know that genre a little bit. Now you're becoming more and more informed about the genre. You're starting to compare different games across these things, and you still enjoy it, but you enjoy it in a different way. The joy of gaming is no longer coming from the novelty, from how brand new and interesting it is. It's not coming from the learning the controls and how to control the character necessarily. Maybe it is whenever you switch genres, but it's coming from some level of metagaming. It's coming from some level of narrative experience, maybe. It's coming from different elements of the game. You no longer have this underlying layer of discovery. You're now interacting with different tropes within the game. They're trying to defy your expectations in new ways. Or maybe you're competing with other players. You have to find a new motivation. But we forget about that initial naivety. We forget about that initial innocence, that initial thing of fascination of, oh my God, I can't believe that I can do this. Now, sometimes we remember. Sometimes a game does something so odd, so fascinating, so new, or so beautifully executed that we look at that game and we go, oh my God, it's like I'm playing a game for the first time all over again. Maybe the story is so phenomenal. The voice acting's so good. Maybe you played Baldur's Gate 3 and you went, this doesn't even feel like a video game. This is a whole nother experience. How are they tying all these things together? How are they giving me this much freedom? I've never had this experience in a game before. Maybe you're just playing something with a lot of secrets. Maybe you're playing something that satirizes the genre that you're so used to so thoroughly and so perfectly that you go, oh, this is a new experience. This is something new. And then you connect to that original joy a little bit, you know? Just a little. Maybe not in its totality, but something about that fascinates me. And I think that is something that is worth thinking about, both as a gamer and as a game designer. We're looking for games to play. We're looking for games that bring us this joy. We're looking for novel experiences. And from the perspective of somebody just playing games, there's something really nice about breaking away from a genre that you're used to and going into a new genre. It's also scary. It's intimidating on some level. I don't really like this genre. I'm going to be wasting my time. I don't want to waste my time. That seems unfortunate. That seems bad. But if you're not willing to take the risk of wasting your time playing a genre that you don't normally play, you may never discover something new, right? There is this beauty to this that if you're just going down the same path over and over and over and over, you don't get to experience that ignorance, that new feeling of having no idea what you're doing and finding your way. And I think there's something that we do in multiplayer games that drives me crazy. And I really want to encourage you to not do this and to not let others do this to you. All right? There's a lot of games where people will try to take care of the onboarding for you. They will say, let's get rid of this initial grind. Let's make this nice and easy and smooth for you and help you connect to the game as soon as possible. Get you to where I am at in the game so we can play together. Sometimes that might be fine. But I've had so many times where I jump into a game and I start playing and somebody's like, oh, let me help you out. And they just give me like a starter loan of 50 gold in a game where it takes like 3 months to get your first 1 gold, right? Like, they'll just give you a bunch of resources. They'll give you a ton of items that you don't know what they do. And they'll say, just trust me, man. And now you'll be able to play this content. And then you don't know what any of the buttons are. It's like getting a level 80 boost when you've never played the game before. And you're like, I have all these tools and I didn't go through the progression of learning this game. I think this is a trap that MMOs fall into in their late phases, right? They do this thing where they're like, okay, well, now we have to accelerate all the early phases of the game. This is probably why WoW Classic got so popular. That nostalgia, a lot of nostalgia, but like retail WoW I was playing around with, and it's like you get from level 0 to level 20 in just seconds. It's so, not literally seconds, but I got like 4 level ups in that game in just like 3 conversations with NPCs. It's insane. And they do this rapid acceleration because they just assume that you already know all this stuff, basically. Or they're like, we got to push you to the new content because that's what you're really here for. And it's like, no, I'm here for a game, man. I'm here to just have a good time. So this feeling of being carried too hard, whether it be by another player or by a company, it really pulls a lot of the joy out of a game for me. And maybe you're not the same way with this, you know? But I need to take the time to experience the game. I need to be an idiot. That's what it comes down to. If I'm going to enjoy a game, I need to go through the phase of having no freaking clue what I'm doing. Let me be stupid when I'm playing this game for the first time. Because if you let me be stupid, then when I understand what is going on with this game, I'm going to have a sense of accomplishment. And games are already so accelerated. They're such an accelerated path of learning. And they're designed to be satisfying and pretty rapid paced. And you progress way more quickly in the skills of a video game than you do in the skills of real life. And if you already have all these foundational gaming skills, then the only new thing you're learning is the gameplay of this particular game. And if it gets accelerated even further than it already is, it ends up feeling like cheating. And it's just not that fun, you know? I mean, is it fun to gamble if you win 100% of the time? No, that would make it way less addictive, right? This is not an endorsement of gambling, by the way. There is something about just getting carried through the game that removes some of the joy, you know? So, if you're going to help somebody out in a game, help them out with some quality of life stuff. Give them the kind of pointers that just get annoying crap out of their way, right? I had somebody on World of Warcraft give me some more inventory slot stuff, some backpacks for inventory slots. Great. That's marvelous. I want that. That gets so much stuff out of the way. Unless that is like your core thing that you're motivated by, right? If you are motivated by farming up and getting to the point where you can make these bags for yourself, then don't take the bags. But depending on your own motivations, that might just be a quality of life thing that you freaking love. Take the quality of life bumps, sure, but if it's getting rid of the thing you're enjoying about the game, I'd be a little hesitant. I'd take your time a little bit there, Enjoy the game. Let yourself suck at it. Let yourself be an idiot. What games? Okay, what is this? I wrote a note here. I wrote a note and it just says games that bring you the most joy. And I don't remember what that note is. I think what I'm trying to say is what are the games that have brought you the most joy in your life? And what is it about them? What is it about them that you really deeply connected with? Because I'm betting that there is a chunk of it that had to do with you learning to be better at the game, you progressing, you getting more skilled at the game. So it's all about this discovery process. It's all about learning new things. It's all about going from ignorance to understanding. That's the real, like, core joy to me. Not just of the hobby as a whole. Like, I think going from I have no idea how a controller works to now I know how to play a game is not that big of a leap, but each individual game has its whole big old learning curve, and this is why people love challenging games so much, right? Now, here's one final point on the gaming side of this rather than the development side, which we've kind of touched on in this portion, but that's how it goes sometimes. I think that there is a strong argument to be made for taking a huge break from video games. I'm talking just taking like 2 years and not playing any games at all. Because then when you come back, it's going to be new. It's like when you watched a show, right? And you know the show so freaking well, and you rewatch it, and you know it so well and whatever, and then you give it 5 years, and then you go and you watch it again, and you're like, this is phenomenal. And there's a recent Psych of Play episode on YouTube called How to Forget a Game, I think. I think that's what it's called. I've not watched it because I'm worried that it'll remind me about too many things that I love in a bunch of games that I want to forget about. But from glancing at a YouTube comment, I think the summary of the video was, don't engage with the things that you want to forget about. If you want to re-experience something, don't engage with it. Step away from it. Give it some air. And then when you come back around, you will be able to experience it in a brand new light. I recently had this with Avatar: The Last Airbender. I haven't watched it in a long time. Recently rewatched the whole original Nickelodeon series. I had forgotten how the show ended. I had forgotten a few scenes throughout. I had forgotten some of the episodes that I really enjoy. And then I got to enjoy them again. And I kind of remember them as I'm watching them. But I'm like, oh, this is nice. This is a good time. I'm glad I haven't been thinking about this show for however many years. And now I get to experience it again. So that with gaming, I would love to take a huge break from gaming. I think, to just not game for I don't know, few years, maybe. Or do it very, very lightly and then be able to come back to it with just this childlike mind of oh my God, look at what has happened in games. This is so cool. This is so fascinating. There's so many interesting new things. I don't know that I'll do that because it's pretty intertwined with my career goals. Playing games is an important part of my life in a lot of ways, but it's still on the table, And I think maybe we should all put that on the table so we can come back around and really notice what things we're enjoying and what things we're not. The good thing is, right now there are so many people just putting out fascinating new experiences that it's I don't really even need to take a step away from the whole hobby because there's just individual games that are so interesting and so novel that even for me, somebody who's been playing since before I was 5 years old, I've been playing games for over 25 years. Even for me, I'm like, oh, that's new. Holy crap. I've never seen that before. And I love that that is still the case. On the development side of things, there are kind of two angles we can talk about. The first is to discuss what we need to take into account from the player's perspective when we're designing a game, right? How ignorant is the player of this genre's conventions? How much do they know about this? How much do they know about gaming at all? And we want to just design with that in mind. Are you designing for people who are very aware of the genre? Are you designing something that is mocking it? Are you designing something that is welcoming new people into it? Are you trying to capture a pretty broad audience? These are things that I think should be considered at least on like a subconscious level. I'm not going to say that this needs to be explicitly written out and have this whole elaborate design doc and all of this, but on some level, I think even as a solo developer, there should be an understanding of what your audience is, even if it's just like a felt understanding, right? Are you making a game for kids? Are you making a game for people who have been playing this particular genre for as long as you have? Is it an introduction to the genre? Or is it the deepest, darkest version of the genre that has ever existed, right? So there's that. And there's little things like just control schemes and tutorials and like avoiding text, giant chunks of text, and favoring good design like Breath of the Wild style, showing the controller inputs in the format of the controller on screen. Like there's good little design things you can do to help all players if you're trying to make it pretty approachable. Now, the other side of this whole thing that we can talk about, so there's more to talk about in terms of player perspective, but the other side of things that we can talk about is the experience of designing a game. The feeling of, I am going to make this thing, and just kind of diving into it versus mapping out the entire path and trying to figure out every single detail and this sort of planning overload. I mean, I have an episode about planning, but I think that there is something to be said for not knowing all of the challenges that you're going to face. And there is something to be said for not showing the player all of the challenges that they are going to face. Allude to it, give them a hint, and then say, we're going to work our way there, maybe. But I wouldn't put it right in front of their face and keep it in front of their face the entire time. Just kind of show them where the road ends, maybe, or maybe even don't. Just guide them down a path and say, oh, there's something interesting over here, and shouldn't we find out what that is? There's a million different angles for this, especially in a more narrative game. But as the designer, as the programmer, as the creator, it's easy to look at the game and say, my God, I have to do all of this art. I have to do all of this programming. I have to do all of this design. How am I ever going to finish this project? And you can just be overwhelmed by the totality of the work. You can look at it and you can go, I'm screwed. There's no way. And I suggest ignorance. I suggest not keeping yourself informed about the totality of the work. I say, set a limited version of everything. Say, hey, here's the minimum. Here's what we're going to aim for here. And don't get into every detail of it. Just put some vague lines out there. Say, okay, well, we need 50 levels. And don't think about it too much. I've talked about this before, but don't make a giant spreadsheet that lays out every single detail of every one of those 50 levels unless that motivates you. But if you're like me, that is demotivating. I prefer ignorance in this situation. I don't want to know every single piece of work that I'm going to be doing over the course of the next 2 years while working on this game. And I can't know anyway. If I try to map it out, I'm going to be wrong because I'm learning as I'm going, So I'm never going to actually know what the game needs to be until I get more experience. And then maybe I can do more mapping. Maybe. It's really nice to not know every single detail. It's really nice to not know how hard everything is going to be in the process, because then you can focus on what's right in front of you. You don't need to know that there's a giant brick wall 75% of the way through the journey, because you'll figure out a way to get past it. Now, look for things that are impossible, right? Make sure that there's not something impossible, and then acknowledge that you're going to run into things that are really, really hard. But you don't have to know every single detail of it. Maybe you even have to turn around. But you'll have learned so much in the process that it'll be worth it. Now, I feel like I should make a note here that I'm not telling you to make an MMO or a giant JRPG. When I say do the hard thing, I don't mean do the insanely hard thing, right? Take on a difficult project, don't get overwhelmed by it, and dive in. Don't commit 4 to 8 years of your life to it, though, right? That's another problem that people could run into. If you listen to this and you take this advice and you go, he's right. I'm going to intentionally be ignorant and I'm going to dive into making this MMO. I mean, look, I know I'm contradicting myself immediately here, but don't be that ignorant. don't go that far, man. Be a little, I mean, maybe this is like old man not being optimistic thing, because I know that there's like a youth is more optimistic thing. I'm only 32, by the way. I'm calling myself an old man. I'm not that old. But I do think that there's something to be said for like a little bit of caution, you know? Work your way up to the MMO, folks. Don't start there. I think everybody listening to this podcast probably for the most part knows this, but it's always worth reiterating. I want you to be an idiot. All right? But I want you to be a sane idiot. I want you to get really absorbed in your own perspective and then take a second and look outside and go, wait, hold on. Am I jumping into a pool of lava? And you go, okay, I'm not jumping into a pool of lava. I'm just walking across a bed of coals. Okay, we're good. And then keep going, right? Get really into this thing you're excited about. Get after it. Do this whole thing and make sure that it's at least got some constraints around it. It's just within a reasonable time frame. There's something that keeps the scope down a little bit. But then don't get too obsessed with how big of a project it is, because it can be too much. And of course, like I said already, maybe this doesn't apply to you at all. Maybe you want a spreadsheet with 10,000 lines on it that you are gradually checking off over the course of 2 years. And maybe you have the knowledge to build that spreadsheet, and that is like the first step for you. Great. That's marvelous. But for people who are getting stuck in like paralysis by analysis and stuff, just go in and just go in. Well, I mean, look, worst case scenario, you start working on the project, you get 2 weeks in and you go, Jesus, this sucks actually. And then you take a second look at it and you go, okay, well, I started. Can I do something with this? What did I learn from this? How are we doing? Okay, maybe we just cancel this and reset and start from a different point now that I am a more informed person. Now that I am less ignorant about designing a game. Let the ignorance make a few stupid mistakes. Let the ignorance drive you to be passionate and foolish and idiotic. Don't let it fully drive you. But let it be a little more powerful than people seem to think it's supposed to be. That's how I feel about it, right? There's so much like, no, you have to do it this way. This is the right way to design this. This is how you do it. This is this. This is that. Why are you doing it that way? Screw that. Make things. That can just go away. It doesn't matter. Leave it alone. yeah, you would be faster at designing this game if you knew every single perfect way to design every single thing, and if your code was perfect and flawless and blah, 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 blah. But you'd also be spending 2 decades learning to do everything perfectly. So screw that. Take the extra 6 months because your code is a mess and you have to refactor absolutely everything. Otherwise, it's all going to fall apart. And learn those lessons through that instead of spending 20 years learning how to do it perfect the first time. And then you start doing it perfect the first time and then you go, oh, wait, nope, I'm still making mistakes anyway, right? Not to be. Obviously, my perspective is coming across pretty clearly on this one. I think we should leave it there and wrap things up for the week. Thank you for listening to this long, rambling thing that I'm passionate about. And let's wrap this up. I have one question for you this week, and only one. I'm limiting it to one because I want you to think about it. I really hope that you'll ponder this because I find it to be a fascinating question. What wouldn't you have done had you known it would be so hard? Or even had you known every detail of the process? And I'd like you to look at this from an emotional perspective if you can. I want you to try to put yourself in the shoes of you when you made the decision and imagine that you had known every step along the way, that somebody had told you this is going to happen, you're going to suffer with this, you're going to struggle with this. And they're not even telling you that you're going to finish the project. They're just telling you these are all the things that you will struggle with along the way. So you don't know that you're going to complete it, but you now know every single difficulty that will get in your way. What wouldn't you have done? And the reason I ask this question is because I remember in music college, when I got my degree in music education, it was not just me that felt this way. I had this conversation with one, maybe two other people. I remember this being a thing that I discussed with other people. We had to perform a vocal solo in front of our peers and some teachers. We had to sing a song in front of an audience as part of one of our classes. And I remember having the conversation of, I would not have been a music major had I known I had to do this. This is such a terrifying experience. This is such a gut-wrenching, awful, I want to jump out of a window to avoid this level experience that I would have picked a different degree path to not have to do this. At least they're like, I would have at least not picked education. Maybe I would have stayed in music, but like, I didn't know the education majors had to do this, right? It's a scary experience. However, by the time we all had to do it, we were pretty invested in the program and we were like, well, I guess we're singing for each other. Okay, here we go, right? And I bet that there are other experiences like that. I bet if you dig down into it, there are things that you wouldn't have done that would surprise you. I feel that we do not need to know every struggle along the way. And I feel that that's the beauty of ignorance. Once you really get invested in the thing, then you'll keep going. I say all this, and then I look at the first game I made and I go, no, I still would have done it had I known about every challenge along the way, blah, 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 blah. Maybe. I don't know, man. I feel like if I give myself the knowledge of every single thing, every new skill that I'm going to learn along the way, and I give myself that knowledge up front, day one, starting the project, and go, here's the checklist, I'm not sure I would have made my first game. I'm not sure I would have started the podcast. I'm not sure I would have done any of this stuff. And maybe this is a personality thing, but I have to dive in like a fool sometimes. You know? And you know what? Earlier I said if you're wanting to make an MMO, don't do it. But maybe do it and set a time limit, you know? Maybe be a fool, but you better set a time limit on that. That's one thing I did with my first game. I said, this is how long I have. It is going to be done by this date, no matter what. Whatever the state of the game is, that is when it's releasing. Does not matter. Locked in. The end. if you're going to do some crazy, massive, ambitious project, boy, you better have a time limit and you better start as soon as possible, right? Don't like say, oh, I'm going to prepare for the next year and then I'm going to figure out how long my time limit will be. No, 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 no. Time limit starting from right now. When are you going to be done with that MMO? You know? And don't have it be like 4 to 8 years. Like maybe chill out a little bit. You know, that's a bigger investment. But you know, I don't know. I'm not you. You live your life. My advice is just I'm just some guy. I'm just some voice that you're listening to because you enjoy it for some reason, and I appreciate that. By the way, if you want to hear more of my voice, I have a Twitch stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern. When do I start that? It's 2 p.m. Eastern. We go 3 hours of game dev, 2 hours of gaming. The game dev is honestly a lot of chatting. How did you like that segue, by the way? That was like, I'm proud of that segue. All right, we got that. We got this podcast. We got the Discord. Cool things are happening. People are finishing projects. It's exciting. And that's that. Oh, one of the members of the Discord is doing a play test on Saturday. I think is it the 13th? Shoot, I don't have the exact date, but you can check out the Discord and see they're doing like a Survivors like game. I'm sorry that I don't have the name off the top of my head, but you can pop into the Discord and you can get all the info and you can find the stuff about the playtest and hop into it. I will be giving more info on that game whenever it actually fully releases, by the way. I like promoting the stuff that community members finish making because that's really cool. Okay, that's everything. That's the episode. Have an excellent week. Have a good time. Be a little bit of an idiot. Get out there, make some stuff, and have fun with it. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.